for Flash, CS5 and CS6. Today we're gonna go into lesson 6, which is in creating preloaders in ActionScript 3.0. So in this lesson we'll learn to do the following. Check your Flash files to determine whether you need to use a preloader. Use the testing and simulation tools in Flash to experience your projects at different connection speeds. Use the progress event and methods of the UIloader class to track the progress of loading media. Use the ProgressBar component to give the user feedback on loading media. Calculate the percentage of requested content as loaded and display that percentage in a text field for the user. Use the complete event to hide the preloader and display content when it is completely loaded. Use the percentage of a file that is loaded to trigger the playback of frames in a movie clip. Now, so far, the lessons that we've done, we've added a lot of functionality to our Flash projects, and they all work seamlessly on our local machines. However, the problem is when we attempt to download these files onto a computer from a server over the internet. Not everybody in the world has fast internet connection, and if the server that your file resides on is being downloaded by many clients, the bandwidth will be split between the many clients, causing a very slow download. Now, I'm quite sure a lot of you have seen preloaders. For example, if you go to a lot of websites, there will be this preloading screen that goes from 0 to 100%, and it says so it gives the user feedback that the animation is being loaded. Now we'll just go on to try out to use the bandwidth profiler. So let's just begin by, let's open up this one. Let's open up, and we're going to go to lesson 6. And we're going to go to lesson 02 complete. Sorry, just give you a demonstration. Okay, and we are just going to come over here. So remember this. So we got to just test the scene. Control test movie. So notice this. Now what we're going to do is going to view the bandwidth profiler. So notice over here the bandwidth profiler here. It's a way to show the profile of what is the bandwidth that's required to download this animation here. So now while we're still here, we got to come over to download settings, and we got to choose DSL is 32 kilobytes per second. And we got to choose, and we got to look at the bandwidth profiler here. Okay, so now notice this bandwidth profiler. It's lots of useful information. It's a streaming graph, and it'll tell you the amount of data that has to be sent over the internet. So this shows you the content of the frames of the frames for our animation. So it shows you that in the first frame there's a lot of information, 64 kilobytes. So when the user wants to download this file, he has to wait about approximately 2 seconds before the animation begins. So for that 2 seconds, that's a reasonable, acceptable time for a user to wait for the animation to begin. However, there are certain Flash animations that could be even hundreds of kilobytes or even a megabyte of data, and it might be just too long for him to wait for everything to download first before playing the animation. So these are some of the tools that we can use to simulate and test and view profile our downloads. So now we got to open up our start file for lesson 6 over here, and we got to open up the start file here. Notice this has been done already. So we're going to test the movie. Okay, so now we've got turn off the bandwidth profiler. Now, the problem with this movie is that when the user tries to download the external Swift files that we created, so they are large enough that they will not receive these files instantly. So if members of our audience try to view this file in its current form, each time they click on one of these links, it'll take some time for them to view it, and they will not receive any feedback of the load in progress. Okay, so let's choose View Simulate Download. So notice the downloading of this animation takes quite a long time, and then we gotta try to download this, click, and this, and notice that it's just a very, very long wait for the pictures to load into our testing screen here. Okay, so one of the ways we control our audience reaction is to create this thing called a preloader. Okay, so let's save this lesson first. So we got save as. And we're going to add another layer on top of this, and we're going to call it Preloader Content. Now, from the Tools panel, we are going to use the Text tool, and we're going to create a text layout format text field. So over here, we're just going to create something like this. In the properties, we will call this prog_text. And in the properties over here, in the position and size, we'll set x to 30, y to 440, width to 150, and height to 50. So that puts it right about over here. Now in the character settings, we choose any font that we like. We can choose Verdana, and the font size of maybe about 12. And a color that contrasts with the background. Maybe this color might be nice. Next, we'll add a ProgressBar component. So we'll go over to the components over here. And from the user interface list here, now notice there's this thing called a ProgressBar. And now what we're going to do is going to click here, and we're going to drop it directly over here. Okay, so component in this name, okay, we can use replace, that's fine. Okay, so notice over there, we have a progress bar over there. Now make sure it's still selected and give it a name, bar. And in the component parameters over here, in the section here, we'll set the component's source parameter to load window. So remember this. Oops. So remember this over here, this load window. So what it means is that this one will monitor the load window over here. So this progress bar over here will actually just monitor the progress of this window. Now, remember when we did lesson 6, we used the UIloader component to load image and Swift files. So the UIloader component has ActionScript events, properties, and methods. to make it easier for us to monitor progress. So now the text field and progress bar instances here that we just created allows us to get feedback on the loading progress. So let's just come over here. Let's open up the actions layer. Now the progress bar component we added does not need to be visible until the user chooses to load a file. So we'll just add a property over here, bar.visible equals to false. Now content is being loaded into a UIloader instance. Now the loading takes place anytime user makes a selection. So the code on the line for over here uses the source property of the UIloader, but it does not offer many options for tracking the loading progress. Now the load method of the UIloader component provides an alternative way to load content into the component, offers much more control. So now looking at this load window.source is as this, so we got to change it to, instead of saying change it, leaving it here like this. Okay, so instead of that we got to just type this load window load new all request e.targeted. So this cut, and we got paste it over here. So we got just delete this one over here. So now it looks like this. Now if we have to test this project right now, it'll do the same thing, except that we are using the load function or load method. Now every time we load, we do this loading, there's this event that's called progress. Every time this happens, it reports the number of bytes of files have been loaded, and when the file has been successfully finished loading, another event called complete occurs. So these are the things that we will use for our preloader. So what we do is that we listen to the progress and complete events. So let's come over here. So what we're going to do is that we're going to add in some event listeners. Load window dot add event listener progress event dot progress handler, and we got type here load window dot add event listener event dot complete handler. Okay, so what will happen is that whenever a progress event occurs, it will call this one, and when it's complete, it will call this event. So let's just create our handlers over here. Okay, so we just add the following. Let me just increase. So we say bar visible equals to true, that means we show the visible bar, and also we'll make the progression text visible equal to true, and we got just create this thing here. Okay, let's put it in a line var percent int equals to load window dot percent loaded. So what this does is that you looks for this one and looks for this property called how much percent is loaded, and it says prog underscore text dot text equals to string load window dot bytes loaded plus string load window dot bytes total So what I'm going to do now is just continue this in the next line so it's easier for you to read. Bytes total plus bytes the /n means new line, and we're going to the next line here, which says bar.set progress e bytes loaded e dot bytes total. So notice that what it does is that it finds out the percent, it looks at the percent loaded and it prints it out into the text box and it sets the bar here. So this is where we create the text here, which provides the feedback, and this one sets the progress from, this one shows what is loaded and what's total left to go to load. Okay, so there's one more thing to do, which is the complete handler event. So notice we got this one, so we got to copy this one and we got to create the function complete handler. Now I can just put E as well, that's okay, so no problem. I know in fact it's more following the convention. So we got to say bar.visible. Well, so that's what means that bar.visible false. That means, okay, when we finish, you gotta make it invisible again. And now that we have done, we remove all the event listeners because we've done. Okay, so let's just test. Hopefully there are no errors, no compiler errors, and the only thing is about the font, the warning about the fonts. So, and notice there's a control here. So I'm going to simulate the download. So now this is too fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to control test. Okay, so I am going to simulate download. And then you can see the bytes loading and the progress bar moving. Again, it loads all this. And okay, so we go into the next part of our tutorial here, which is in controlling the frames of a movie clip to reflect loading progress. Now, the progress bar helps us to give a useful way to give the user feedback. However, it's not the most interesting to stare at for long. Okay, so what we can do is that we can use it to give the user more interesting waiting period experience. For users who are very slow, you may want to display a new text in a text field every time a certain percentage of the content is loaded. So you can give them some entertaining information, or you can tell them at what point has it loaded in our animation. Okay, we can also use the percentage to determine which frame of a movie clip is displayed. So let's add a movie clip to the project that's triggered by loading progress. Okay, so let's open up our library. Okay, so now there's a load clip animation here. And notice here we got a timeline here. So, and actually if you play it here, there's some kind of animation over here. So it just shows something that goes up like this. If you look at this, it's actually basically a mask that controls the opacity of our icon. Okay, so notice here there's a mask here, and notice there's a glow filter that controls the effects here. So alpha is 49%. And notice another thing is that there's 100 frames, so this corresponds to our 100%. So we use the percentage to determine which frame to display. Okay, so let's come back to scene 1. So now we come over here and select the preloaded content layer. Okay, and we got to drag the instance of our load clip into over here. And we can come maybe put it over here. And we got to go properties and we're going to give it a name. We call it load animation. Okay. So let's go back to our action script over here. Show all. Okay, so we just add a few more lines here. So over here there is the load file function. And notice that this bar.visible equal to false. So we got to do this as well. Load animation dot stop. Okay, so we got to tell it to stop, and we got to say load animation dot visible equals to false. So we're not going to play any animation and we're not going to show it. And the next thing is we're going to set the alpha value dot alpha equals to 0.8. Okay, and what we want is for it to appear while the progress of the loading file is being tracked. So we just modify the part over here. So we just say load animation dot visible equals to true. And we got to just put this following line of code over here. So now we got a percentage. So we just say load animation dot go to and stop percent. Just go to and stop. So what will happen is that every percent represents a progress for our animation, and we just tell it to play, go to that frame of the animation. Now the only problem is that it might request to go to frame 0 when 0% of the file is loaded. So what we're going to do here is we're going to come here and type math.ceil, which means the ceiling of the percentage. Okay. Now we got to come over to completer, and we got to do the same thing over here. So load animation dot visible equals to false. There it is. Okay. So let's just try it now. Okay, so obviously the download is just a bit too fast because we're doing it on a local machine. So let's try it out over here. Notice, and we got some animation over here. So notice this part here. You see it is going up, and there we have it. So this way, the load animation can have any graphical content. You can make a running man, or you can make a beer bottle fill up or fill down, whatever things that would fit the theme of your animation. However, make sure that the movie clips, you must monitor the size of our movie clips, and you make it too big, it's just not useful. So just keep it small. Okay, so you can use this technique to monitor loading of anything like media or data into Flash player. So use whatever types of preloaders whenever, and search Flash help and the Flash community resources for other ways to use preloading techniques. So some suggestion for you: try create your own movie clip and use it as a feedback. It's easier if we make the number of frames in our clip multiple of 100, so that the frames can easily be associated with the integer. Add a new item in the load list and use it to load a much larger file, and see how that whether that keeps the user's interest. You can also use a text field and have a text property change, so you can use a conditional to make the text change every time the percent increases by 20, so we might even make it a story, for example. And you could also use a gallery, for example, in this part over here. So you remember this part here, you could put a preloader so that there's a preloader inside here to tell the user that this picture needs time to download. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next lesson.